Hello, my name is Mike Cosentino with Big Peach Running Company in Atlanta. It's my pleasure to be with you here today so that we can talk about working together to ensure that the momentum that already exists for the Run for God program continues, not just this season, but well into the future as we work together to keep smiles on our faces, keep miles on these shoes that we're going to talk about today, and make sure that others recognize how much fun we're having as part of the most inspiring training, fitness, or running or walking program that's come around in a long time. We're going to start from the ground up. Obviously, when we say from the ground up, what it means is we're going to talk about your running footwear. And there is nothing that is more important in order for you to get the most out of your Run for God experience and stay injury-free and keep that smile on your face than having the right shoe for you. And when I say for you, this is that license, maybe that license that you've been looking forward to having, that you can be selfish in what you choose and in what you wear. You can see there are a tremendous number of offerings on this footwear wall behind me, but there are so many shoes that are not right for you that we would hardly suggest that you even bother trying on. The secret, of course, is learning enough so that you know which ones you should give some consideration to and which ones you should think about making that partner of yours as you launch into Run for God. So what we'll do is we'll talk about three things. And there are three things that we're going to ask you to kind of memorize. And regardless of how you get your shoes, these are the three things that you have to know about yourself. So for all those well-intentioned neighbors and friends and coworkers, and even family members that have said to you, gosh, this is the shoe for me. This is the shoe that I think you should have. Always what you need to remember is that you appreciate their willingness to share that with you. But again, this is about you. And just because of something that works for them, there's no guarantee that's what's going to be right for you. And the things that we'll talk about will underscore that very consideration. Again, this is about you. So let's go ahead and get started. The first thing, and perhaps the most mysterious word in all of running. Lots of times we'll do footwear clinics and we'll say, how many of you have heard the term pronation? So think about that for a second and say to yourself, have I heard that term? And when we do these clinics, we get all kinds of people who raise their hands. And they've heard that term, pronation. But then we say, well, who wants to come up here and explain what it is? And all of a sudden, lots of hands go down. And there's nobody left but those of us up here front to say, you know what? Let's demystify this term. So in its most simple element, this is what pronation is. And I'm going to use this shoe, but thinking about it not just as a shoe with a foot form in it, but think about it as the foot coming through the natural gait cycle. Pronation is nothing more than what's required to get your foot from a fully planted position ultimately into your mid stance and eventually up onto your toes so you can take that next step. So it's going to happen with every step that you take. It's going to happen on the right side. It's going to happen on the left side. It's going to happen whether you're walking, whether you're jogging, or whether you're running at full speed. Pronation happens with every single step you take. And if you think about how many steps are necessary, whether you're going out for your first walk in a long time, or whether you're training for your next marathon, with all those steps that are being taken, knowing what is happening to you and your individual pronation characteristics is so critically important because all of these shoes, every single one of these models is designed for different pronation possibilities. So now how do you find out what's happening from that fully planted position into the mid stance, ultimately up onto your toes? There are different ways to do it. People that are qualified to look at it can kind of run behind you, can kind of walk behind you and make their own assessment, tell you what they've seen. In our stores, what we do is we actually take videotape and then we play it back so we can look at it together. There are different terms that come along with pronation. Perhaps you've heard the term overpronation, underpronation, supination. These are all various possibilities when it comes to just analyzing pronation. We get people that come into our stores, and I hate to pick on the guys, but the guys do it more than the girls, and they kind of come in and they think they've got this somewhat uncurable medical condition, and they think, I think I pronate. And it's like, hey, you know what? You absolutely pronate. Everybody pronates. Say it loud and say it proud. You pronate. So what we need to do now is find out how you pronate. And the way that we do that is less important than finding out the results. And we're going to talk about the different shoes and what you'll look for once you know your pronation tendencies. But just because your spouse pronates one way, just because your coworkers pronates a certain way, just because your neighbors may pronate a particular way, that doesn't mean that's the way that you pronate. So until you know your own individual pronation tendencies, you're not going to be in a position to find the best shoe for you. So the second thing that we're going to talk about then is foot shape. And similar to pronation, foot shape is one of those things that it doesn't take too long, especially when you think about the complexity of a mechanism that looks like this. And obviously, you don't get to see it in the same fashion when you look down at your own feet, but your own feet are so different from anybody else's. And all of these shoes, again here behind me, are designed for different foot types. Some of the things I'm going to ask you to think about. Your arch profile. Might be incredibly high, might be more collapsed, maybe entirely flat. How broad, how narrow are your feet? Think about some of those special considerations that are uniquely you. That second toe that happens to be longest. That bunion you just can't seem to not be irritated. That whatever it is that's growing off the back part of your ankle. Either way you look at your feet or somebody else's feet, you come to the same conclusion. And that is they're all different. So until you know enough about your foot shape, you can't possibly know about which shoes are right for you. So then there's the third thing that we're going to talk about. And the third thing actually is three separate things. And it's fit, feel, and ride. And these are those subjective considerations. So as a quick review, we talked about pronation, we talked about foot shape, and those are very objective. Again, there are different ways to assess what your pronation tendencies are or what your foot shape characteristics are. And if you look at someone's foot shape, you can say, wow, they've got a very high arch, or they've got a really broad forefoot. If you sit behind somebody as they're kind of running by you, you can get an idea of what their pronation tendencies are, and it's tough to argue that, especially like in our stores where you have video or we have images of someone's foot shape. But now we talk about these subjective considerations, again, fit, feel, and ride. And the reason that they're subjective is because you now become the expert. See how this comes back to you? And so with you being the expert, there are certain things that you're going to be able to assess whether it makes the right shoe for you to feel like I'm going to look far more forward to putting this on than I'll look forward to taking it off. And that's going to be a key to getting the most out of your Run for God experience. Some of the things that you'll think about, is it soft enough for you? Not everybody wants soft. Maybe some people want light. Some people will have to say it is or is not light enough. Some people feel the heel doesn't fit the way they want it to. Maybe that slides up and down. Perhaps it feels sloppy in the toe box. Perhaps you just can't get those laces to cinch up the midfoot the way that you want. These are all things that are absolutely understandable and that only you are ultimately going to be able to evaluate and determine whether or not it's going to be the right shoe for you. And when you're trying on shoes, regardless of how you're doing it, go out and use them the way you intend to. If you're walking, take a walk in them. If you're planning on running, run a little bit in them. We see people in our stores all the time, they'll stand up and they'll do this little routine. It's like, how much ground can you possibly cover doing this? Get out and run or walk in them. Same thing for you. That's the only way you'll know if they're fitting the way that you want them to. So when we think of fit, we got to talk a little bit about sizing. First of all, about a thumbnail's length between your longest toe and the end of the toe box. When we said your longest toe, again, there are those of you out there, and you know who you are, that your longest toe is not your big toe. So your longest toe and the end of the toe box, especially when you're coming down those hills, you're not going to want to be banging those toes up against the front. And without that thumbnail's length, you're putting yourself at risk. When we talk about feel, very, very subjective. Is it light enough? Is it soft enough? Is it responsive enough? These are things that no matter what your neighbors say about their favorite shoes, what your spouse tells you about his or her favorite pair, it ultimately has to be something that you just simply say feels right to you. And then when we talk about the ride of the shoe, again, this is something that's only going to be detectable when you're using it the way you intend to. It's going to be that transition. All walkers, most runners tend to land towards the rear part of their foot, and then they engage that pronation cycle. When this happens, certain shoes will just feel like they're complementing what you do naturally. Other shoes will feel awkward or feel like they slap. And that'll be a sign to you that, man, I need to try another pair. And those other pairs that you're going to try, they're still going to be right for your foot shape. They're still going to be right for your biomechanics sequence, your pronation tendencies, but they now still have to meet your criteria for fit, for feel, and for ride. Now that you know those three things that you need to know about yourself, let's start talking about those certain things that you should also know about shoes. And shoes are a complicated consideration. This is a cutout that doesn't even include all the components of a technically capable running shoe. And with all these shoes to choose from, once you know what you need to know about yourself, it's helpful, especially if you don't have a vast amount of resources in your community to help you understand what you would need, even if you know about your foot shape, about your pronation, and about your personal preferences for foot feel and ride, we'll let you take this information with you. And at some point, you'll then be able to say, here's the type of shoe that I need. So let's talk a little bit about the way shoes are designed. First of all, if we go back to the term pronation, this is a shoe that you can see very easily has this componentry in the middle part of the shoe. The middle part of the shoe is what we refer to as the midsole. And the midsole is going to have two very, very important considerations. The one is to be able to work with your individual pronation tendencies. The other is to deliver the cushioning that you deserve to get the most out of every step that you take. So let's talk about pronation for a second. And as we talk about pronation, and then we go back to this componentry here, you can't feel it like I can, but you can see it. And when I touch this and I press on it a little bit more solidly, there's resistance. And the reason being, there is a type of pronation tendency, oftentimes referred to as overpronation. Someone's coming overly quick through that pronation cycle, or they tilt inward before they launch into that next step. When that happens, it puts stress unnecessarily on certain parts of the lower body. This componentry ends up putting a resistance factor in place that won't allow that person to cave in to the same degree, thus keeping them in a more aligned, a more balanced position, taking that unnecessary stress off of the lower part of the body. Not all overpronators are created equally. If we take a look at this shoe that I have here, and then we take a look at this shoe here, they're from the exact same manufacturer, and every manufacturer does this. You can see there's far more componentry in this shoe on my left side than what there is here. And if we take it even one step further, look at this shoe. Again, same manufacturer, yet a lesser amount of componentry. All of these shoes are designed for someone who overpronates, but overpronation can take place to a varying degree. Knowing how much you overpronate goes back to the importance of knowing you and knowing what you need. So then all of a sudden we take the same manufacturer and we look how clean this particular shoe is. That component we referred to in the midsole is completely absent. The absence means that for someone who doesn't tend to cave in, they don't need that. In fact, if they have it and they don't need it, it can end up proving deleterious or become harmful. It ends up pushing them to the outside. Perhaps it even puts stress on the lateral or the outside part of the body as a result of having it in their shoe when they don't need it. So this componentry, referred to as a medial post, again, most manufacturers use the exact same approach, can be identified, usually discolored, and certainly more firm. So if you don't have the same selection that we do here in your community, and you know you overpronate to some degree, think about, well, how much, and then find out where the shoes are, wherever you're selecting them from, that have this kind of visible componentry built in to the middle part of the shoe. So let's take a look at this video of overpronation. As you see this individual coming through his gait cycle, again, pronation starts when they're fully planted, as they make their way back to their mid stance, and ultimately as they push off to the next step. You'll see before that pronation cycle concludes, the collapse to the inside part of the treadmill. You can see it identified by the Achilles tendon to the inside being stressed and almost that ankle starting to move towards the other leg. The other video, it's a completely different individual, same treadmill, same type of shoe. You'll see they're in a much more aligned position. That tendency to collapse inward is completely absent. And it's not because of something the shoe is doing, it's because that person's natural pronation tendencies are just different, markedly different than the other video. So the one type of pronation that we're not gonna show a video is underpronation or supination. And the reason we're not gonna show a video is because it happens so rarely. In fact, in less than 5% of the population. But it's talked about a lot. And simply, it's that person who tends to collapse to the outside. And that person that tends to collapse to the outside, similar to the person who has that very efficient stride, is not going to want componentry in that middle part of their shoe or in their midsole. Again, their shoe is going to look more like this. That person that does collapse to the outside, that very, very uncommon instance, last thing they want is to cut even more to the outside, where now the lateral side of their body, the lateral side of their knee, and even their foot has this stress that shouldn't necessarily be there. But again, it's a very small instance. We're not going to show you a video. We are going to tell you the importance of cushioning. And the reason we're going to do that, we talk about midsole, we identified why this componentry is sometimes in the shoe, But what everybody already thinks about is, how do I keep it from hurting? How do I make sure that I'm protected? There used to be two types of shoes out there. There were stability shoes and there were cushioning shoes. And the mindset was, for someone who overpronates, they need a stability shoe. And for someone who's more efficient in their pronation tendencies, they get a cushioning shoe. We actually changed, and we believe that everyone should change the terminology to structured cushioning and neutral cushioning. Because who would want a stability shoe over a cushioning shoe, right? So the reality is, structured cushioning provides the same amount of cushioning as neutral cushioning. So if you're one of those, and more people than not are, who overpronate, do not fear, you're gonna get the same amount of cushioning that your neutral counterparts are. When this componentry goes in the shoe, it's warranted in most shoes for 400 to 500 miles. Keep that in mind. It's not about time. It's not that everyone should replace their shoes every 6 or 8 or 12 months. Someone that's running more miles per week than you are, they're gonna need to replace their shoes more quickly. If you start running more miles than what you did 2 months ago, you're gonna need to start replacing your shoes more frequently. The cushioning in this shoe ends up protecting you from 3 to 5 times your body weight upon heel strike, equal to 2 times your body weight upon push off. Every step that you take, you deserve that protection. For you to get the most out of your Run for God experience, you need that protection. So we've spent a lot of time talking about the midsole, and rightfully so. Again, its role to make sure it syncs up with your pronation tendencies and protects you with the cushioning that you deserve. We also have to take into account 2 other components on the shoe, and there really are just 3 parts of a technically capable running shoe. We talked about the midsole, now let's talk about the top part, or what we refer to as the upper. And here's the most important thing to remember about the upper. It needs to be breathable. It needs to be made of synthetic materials. This is the part of the shoe that's gonna allow your foot to be comfortable because it's dry and because it's cool as possible. Here's one thing that a lot of walkers need to take note. We oftentimes work with people who will come in and say, well, I'm just walking. And first of all, walkers, you're covering the same distance. Embrace the fact that you're walking. But we're not gonna put walkers in conventional walking shoes. And one of the biggest reasons is most of the time, those are built with synthetic leather from the tip of the toe all the way to the heel of the shoe. And in places like Atlanta, Georgia, synthetic leather isn't particularly comfortable in the middle of the summer. So get that open woven mesh to help keep your feet cool. And with them being synthetic materials, it'll help keep the feet dry because it's gonna pull the perspiration and the other moisture outside so that it can evaporate from the top part of the shoe. The last part of the shoe, predictably, is what we refer to as the outsole. And there are 2 considerations to the outsole, and both of them are hopefully such that you won't have to think about them at all. The rear part of the shoe, again, we said most runners, all walkers, tend to land more towards the rear part of their foot. So this is a carbon rubber. It's more abuse resistant. Again, you think back to 3 to 5 times your body weight, so you need to have something that can take that abuse without showing the wear right away. Up in the forefoot, as you push off into the next step, it's gonna be carbon rubber. Carbon rubber is flexible. It's meant to be malleable so your foot can manipulate it as you push off into that next step, time and time again. All right, y'all, now we have talked a little bit about running shoes. We've dissected them. We've talked about the importance of you knowing what you need to be in the right shoe for you. We're now gonna declassify some information. We're gonna talk about the myths of technically capable running shoes. And here's something that if you don't already know this, you'll find out soon enough. With this decision that you've made to be part of Run for God, you're joining the rest of us that have to go out and make sure that running not only is fun, but looks fun. And there'll be people that you've never spoken to that now, because they saw you leave your house early in the morning to go for a run, that will assume you're the new expert. There are people that you've told that you're part of the Run for God program, and that may have been all they heard you say all year long, but they now expect you to fix their knee problem. They expect you to tell them what type of shoes they should be in. So we're in this together, and we can't do it completely until we take away those myths that are part of running shoes. And there are 4 of them. So let's eradicate them right now. First one, and we're going back to that outsole that we talked about. We oftentimes get people that come in and they look at whether it's their dress shoe or their running shoe. And they say, well, I already know that I tend to kind of roll to the outside. Or if you remember our term, under pronation or supination, they think that they supinate, and they think that because they've got this wear pattern on the outside part of their shoe that is very indicative of abuse or very indicative of where they've been spending a lot of time. But guess what? That's not part of their pronation. Again, pronation doesn't start until you're fully planted. And we talked about how it's 3 to 5 times your body weight upon heel strike, and why outsoles are made of carbon rubber in the rear. So when somebody sees that wear pattern, it doesn't mean that they collapse to the outside. It just means that they land on their heel. In order for you to know what your pronation tendencies are, you're not going to want to evaluate outsole wear patterns. And you're certainly not going to want to let the outside part of the shoe be what you use for most of your evidence. You have to see what happens from mid-stance to push-off. So evaluating outside heel wear, that's a myth, and you need to help us debunk it. Secondly, if you sit there and think about the 2 spots that I have open, and I don't know if somebody's gonna come sit next to me or not, so let's just assume for a second that I've got this person, let's call him Bill. Bill is 6'6", 280 pounds, and he has just joined Run for God. Similarly, we have Susie here. Susie is 5'2" and 115 pounds. So we have Bill at going 300 pounds almost and over 6'5", and we have Susie a little over 5 feet and 120 pounds. But they're now in the exact same shoe, and they've both been properly fitted. Why is that? Because despite the fact that they don't look at all alike, their pronation tendencies and their foot shape might be the same. Running shoes are not designed based on body types. Oftentimes we'll hear people say, I need a big guy shoe, or I'm just, kind of coming off a weight management program. I think I'm now ready for something a little lighter. Those aren't the things that determine what types of shoe you're in. Again, pronation tendencies, foot shape considerations, not body type. That's another myth. Thirdly, pricing parameters. We're all curious what it's going to take for us to be properly fitted. And maybe you don't have the same selection we do here. Maybe you don't have the same expertise that I have the good fortune of working with every day. But you know what you do have? You do have the responsibility to make sure that you're spending both your discretionary income and time very wisely. You can expect to pay somewhere between $85 and $150 for a technically capable pair of running shoes. If all of a sudden you say, oh my goodness, I bought a pair at $65, does that mean you bought a pair that's not capable of protecting you? Perhaps, but I'm going to tell you when you can spend that amount of money. But the myth is twofold. The first myth is that you can never spend less than $80. And the reality is there is a time that you can. This shoe right here is a shoe that's in its 3rd version, which just means that every 12 or 18 months, it gets updated. And when it gets updated, just like cars and furniture and everything else, the older models, for us retailers, we gotta mark them down and move them out and get the new things in. So as a result, now this $120 shoe becomes a $65 shoe. And if it worked for you last year and now you find the same model at 40% off, it's still a great shoe. Now you can spend less than $80. It just happens to be last season's model, and that's okay. The compounds in the midsole are still gonna work just fine. So what about on the flip side? When should you spend more money on a pair of shoes? The shoes behind me range anywhere from $200 to, again, that $80 price point. Does that mean you're gonna get more wear or more durability out of that $200 pair? No, it doesn't. It comes down to features. The heel of the shoe, where a majority of the cushioning is inserted, that is non-negotiable. To be a technically capable shoe, you've got to put enough material, whatever it might be, gel packs, airbags, silicone, whatever it might be, there has to be enough of that in that midsole to keep that impact or that shock attenuation from otherwise coming into the body. If it's not there, it's not worth wearing in a running, a walking, a training, or a fitness program. But now all of a sudden you say, well, this one's 200, or this one's 150, this one's 120, or 95. Where are the differences? The differences are things that I would say are luxury features. They may have an insole that's a little softer. They may have components on the upper of the shoe that's intended to add some flexibility. They may have material around the collar of the shoe that's just gonna give it a softer feel if you like really low-cut socks. Does this mean you need all those features that you should pay the extra money? Not necessarily. This again is where it's so individual. Here's one thing I will say though, if you have a pair that's $130 and you have a pair that's $100 and you put them both on and let's say you don't even look at them, you don't know which is which, and by the time you're done testing both of them, your conclusion is the $130 pair just feels better. I'm gonna look more forward to putting it on. Over the course of 400 plus miles, $30 broken down by miles is a matter of less than pennies. Spend the extra money. You're gonna appreciate it. Not necessarily when you're at the register checking out and taking the shoes with you, but after you've put them on time and time again as part of the Run for God program. The last myth that we're gonna talk about, and it's simply this, and it goes back to those two objective considerations. Specifically, when we talk about some of the things you see online or in podiatrist offices. It'll say, well, if you've got a flat arch, you need a stability shoe or a motion control shoe or a shoe for overpronators. Oftentimes we'll see somebody that shows that high arch and they're told you need a neutral shoe. And what that means is they're trying to classify someone's pronation tendencies based on only knowing their foot type. It doesn't matter what your arch is. You have to know the arch and what's happening in your pronation. In other words, there's a static consideration, what your foot looks like, what your arch is when you're standing up, and a dynamic consideration, like what happens and how your foot behaves when you're coming through your walking or your running gait cycle. Unless you know both, you cannot possibly fit yourself properly. You cannot know just one. So the myth is that arch type indicates pronation, and it doesn't. The two are mutually exclusive, and you have to know each of them. All right, so we've spent a lot of time talking about shoes, and you've learned a lot about the way they're constructed, and maybe even what you hadn't thought about before that's now so important for you getting the best shoe for you. At this point, what we're gonna do is we're gonna anticipate a few questions that unfortunately we can't be there to answer. We're gonna frame it up in an area that I think eventually all of us can kind of center on as the place that we have to make sure that we're addressing as a group. And it centers around impact. It's your body against whatever it is that you're taking on with every step that you take. So the enemy potentially really is, it's impact. And there are 4 things that I'm gonna suggest that you think about as we conquer this enemy and as we find the finish line, as we make this a part of who we are and a lifestyle that we lead and that we bring others to enjoy as much as we will in the very near future. So let's start with item number 1, and it's the shoes. We talked about the cushioning components. And I will tell you right away that you don't need to get all 4 of these right to keep yourself protected and to run injury-free, but you darn well better get at least one of them right. And perhaps the easiest one is the cushioning in your shoes, making sure that it's current, not more than that 400, 450 miles, making sure that it has technically capable materials in that midsole, that you're not buying $40 shoes with just a foam filler in there that looks like a running shoe, but doesn't perform as a running shoe. And that of course that it fits who you are, the number of injuries that can be avoided if you get the arch support that you need, if you end up having a shoe that suits the pronation tendencies that you have. The number of injuries that are so oftentimes attributed to someone just being in the wrong shoe are countless. And we don't want that for Run for God. The program has so much momentum. We have to make sure that everyone out there participating is in the right shoe for them, because there's gonna be so many more people then that are doing it with a smile on their face. But besides the shoe, there are 3 other considerations that come to impact. Next is the surface. And if you're wearing a technically capable midsole, whether you're going out your front door on concrete or whether you're running in the park on grass, you're gonna have the same protection. But for those of you that decided on other types of shoes, perhaps something that looks like that, and we're gonna talk about it in a second, now all of a sudden the midsole is gone. And if you're wearing a shoe like this and you're running on concrete, my goodness, you're not getting any protection from the midsole, so perhaps now running on the grass in the park becomes more attractive. Because yes, a softer surface generates less impact. Thirdly, and it just comes to not just types of shoes like this or the quote-unquote minimalism trend, but it comes to everyone and their running form. And we want to match equipment with somebody and what they do naturally. But at the same time, it would be wrong for us not to say that there are just certain ways that you can run that are going to naturally take some of the impact out of every stride that you take. And specifically what you need to do is shorten your stride. The more that you can get your feet underneath you, as opposed to getting way out in front of you, the greater the area of disbursement becomes that you now can dissipate that impact that occurs. I don't know if the camera can follow me, but I'm gonna drop 2 shoes on the ground really quickly. And I'll take 2 regularly constructed shoes. I'll just randomly pull them off the wall. And as the camera follows this, which one do you think ends up generating more impact? First, I'm gonna drop one. Somebody has this long stride, and it's gonna be their heel that hits very prominently. Obviously, there's not an area of disbursement that's particularly large, so all the impact takes place to start with in one particular location. Now we take this shoe and we drop it in a different way. We drop it in a manner that all of a sudden there's a greater area for that impact and that vibration to occur. It's not as violent sounding, it's not as violent feeling. And now with that area of disbursement, because you've got that foot underneath you, and naturally by landing with more of your foot on the ground instead of being way out in front, you've eliminated some of our enemies, some of that impact. Now fourthly, and it's one of those things, and a lot of people who are part of Run for God are doing it as part of a weight management or maybe even a weight loss program. And here's the cool thing about that. Nobody's gonna deny that we'll go back to our example of Bill and Susie. Bill at 280 pounds versus Susie at 120 pounds is just naturally gonna generate more force. Heavier things do. So if you are going to generate more force, you get comfortable with the fact that knowing if you are using this as part of a weight management or a weight loss program, you are naturally taking away some of the impact because you're being mindful of how much force you become capable of generating. So I hope you hit that weight management target, not just because it's a worthwhile goal, but because you're protecting yourself for the short run and in the long run by doing so. All right, so we've spent a lot of time talking about shoes and finding the right shoes for you. So now we need to make sure that there are certain accessories that allow it to all come together. And there's probably no place that that's more important, especially for your shoes, than the socks that you choose. And we're gonna make this really simple. And the reason I say that, and it's just like when you go to the grocery store. Sometimes you'll find yourself looking at the back of the package, you're curious, does it have trans fats in it? How much protein is in here? What's the caloric content? Sock manufacturers, just like all those consumer packaged goods, are required to put their ingredients on the back. And here is rule number 1 and all you need to remember. No cotton in your socks. No cotton in your socks. Cotton serves like what a paper towel would. It just harnesses moisture or perspiration, and it keeps it trapped up against the foot and inside the shoe, which makes a perfect breeding ground for a blister, which is obviously something that you want to avoid. So as you look at the ingredients, and on something like this, it's going to have polyester and nylon, spandex, lycra, all these synthetic ingredients that are going to allow part of your investment in the running shoe, that open woven mesh, to breathe and to pull moisture outside of the shoe so that it can evaporate up top. I've gone running in Atlanta during the summer with friends of mine that didn't know this. And what happens, we get done running, the top of my shoe is very damp. But they've got this cotton sock on, they pull their shoe off and their foot and that sock is incredibly moist. It's okay for the shoe to be a little bit wet. You do not want that moisture trapped inside your shoe. No cotton inside your socks. So we talked about the importance of staying away from cotton and using synthetic materials in your socks. And that's a theme that should resonate with you all the way up to the top of whatever it is that you're wearing. And the reason being is we want you to be able to get perspiration and moisture away from your skin. Because when it's left there, rubbing and chafing and other uncomfortable things tend to happen. And even if you're in the right shoes, when those things happen, it ends up taking some of the fun out of your walk or out of your run. So we're gonna talk a little bit about apparel, and similar to socks where the ingredients are gonna be on the tag, same thing for apparel in most sporting goods stores. And here are some of the other features that perhaps you'll see. So this is a piece that's perhaps most suited for one of those 40-degree days, maybe 35 up to 50 degrees. And the reason I say it, obviously longer sleeves, but part of the reason that it has some flexibility is the sleeves are gonna be very loose, where if you do have to make an adjustment, as you go and temperatures warm up or your body temperature starts to come up a little bit, you can take it off and it's easy to wrap around your waist. It's one of those things that you can take it with you, and nothing is more important, especially in the cooler temperatures, than dressing in layers. The ability to also get a little extra warmth, these thumb holes are by design. Whether you're wearing gloves or whether it's just your bare hands, you can pull this all the way down over your hand for a little extra protection in that area that tends to oftentimes get cold first. Other things that are on this one garment, you can see this zipper that's right here on the chest. Whether it's a key, whether it is an ID of some sort, maybe a credit card or a license, you're gonna have the ability not to feel it against your body, but a real secure and almost obsolete place to be able to tuck it away. The reason that this zipper is here goes back to giving you some flexibility, and the reason that this offers some flexibility, if it's open like this, you're getting some breeze. You're getting a little bit of an invitation to cool down. At the same time, when you start, or all of a sudden it gets windy, it's real easy just to all of a sudden zip it back up. You'll see that there's a little garage here so that you don't catch yourself on the throat or what have you. That way you can easily pull it down when you get a little bit warm, pull it back up if you tend to get a little bit cold. The other thing, and you'll just see a hit of it here, it's called 360-degree reflectivity. This logo, and we're not necessarily pushing one brand more than another, and this indication here, these are Scotch-Lite logos so that people can see you whether you're running towards them or whether they have their lights and they're coming in the same direction that you are. And that visibility so many different times during the year is so critically important. In fact, here's a quick safety PSA that I absolutely want to make sure that all of you take seriously. And the reason that I have these two different vests is there's a difference between visibility and reflectivity. Both of these are going to have reflectivity. It's the Scotch-Lite. It's the Scotch-Lite that you see on the chest of this. It just goes over your top half. But the difference between orange and looking like a safety captain and black is simply for someone that's going running at dusk or at dawn, unless lights are actually on you, this Scotch-Lite doesn't work. But there are times of the day that you need to be seen, and so it's bright colors that actually get the job done more than reflectivity. So as you add miles and think about different parts of your day where you're gonna go for a run, for a walk, think about illumination, think about visibility, and think about reflectivity. All right, so here comes the real showstopper, right? Here's a guy that knows a few things about shoes, and he's gonna tell you about support tops. And that's absolutely right. You know why? Because ladies, and I've heard that 70% of current participants of Run for God are females, and we want that number to continue to grow and for more people to join these programs. And there are mistakes that can be made, not just on your shoes, but other individual consideration. And ladies, you know that that top half is just as individual as your 2 feet are. And that's why it's important when all of a sudden you start breaking down the various components of a sports bra, that you recognize that these are here to reflect the individuality of each person that's actually going to put this on. And here are some things that I absolutely implore you to think about. First of all, when you think about the way the clasp is done, you can see on this particular garment that there are more options than just a standard one piece. And that's because there are different times, different parts of the day. Perhaps if this is part of a weight loss or a weight management program, that you're gonna make adjustments in order to feel fully supported. And the support doesn't just happen at the clasp. It also happens up at the shoulders. There are a lot of casual or everyday bras that don't have the ability to make the adjustment on the fly, so to speak. And the reason that this is done is so that you can be supported at all times. You're coming to a hilly section of your run. You're gonna slow the pace down. That can impact the kind of support that you need, and the subtle adjustments that can be made in these straps allows you to always get the support that you need. Obviously, the material that is going to be near the cups themselves, it's gonna wanna be, for you, something that's not gonna create any chafing. Synthetic materials that are soft to the skin. For those of you that need larger cup sizes, yes, there are some support tops that use underwire, but that underwire then needs to be encapsulated through something that is not gonna be able to be up against the skin. And you're gonna have to try them on to know. You're gonna wanna get your support tops from places that you can return them if they don't work. Because just like your shoes, there are individual considerations that you won't know if they're working for you until you start using it the way you intend to. And lastly, and you would think that this would be common sense, but there are so many runners and walkers out there that have not thought this through yet. And when you are using this type of product in what would be considered a high impact activity, like walking and like running is, you need to be in a cup-sized product. In most cases, small, medium, and large does not get it done. You need to be buying a product that is cup-sized in order to get the support that you need. The materials that are used in this product and the features that we talked about, they have a life cycle. The life cycle is about 60 washes. Hey y'all, thanks for letting me spend some time with you. It has been a privilege to be part of the Run for God program. You're gonna accomplish great things. I'll leave you with one of my favorite Proverbs, Proverbs 4:12, that simply says, if you walk, your steps will not be impeded. And when you run, you shall not stumble. And it is through your faith that I absolutely believe that's the case. So thank you for allowing me to be part of it, and God bless.